Thank you very much for inviting me. And yeah, I feel very privileged to be part of the show, and also that you afford me to speak a couple of words about the project that I'm presenting. Um, Perhaps I can share my screen so I can show you some pictures of the project.
You're getting? Great.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so the installation that I'm showing is called Traces of Fiction, and it's an ongoing research project. And right now in this installation, it is showing two videos that were shot in very particular landscapes. So the first one, or to give like a little more context, each one is essentially a rendition of more or less iconic movie scene that was shot in this particular location. So the one on the top is the Desierto de Tabanas, desert in Andalusia in Spain. And the second one is the Calanque de Portalon in Provence in France. And so for the videos, I pretty much made an exact copy of how the movie was shot. That means the camera is in exactly the same position as it was in the movie. I'm using the same lenses, the same kind of focus, the same framing, the same cutting, the same color correction, and to pretty much make a copy of the movie with everything there, even the soundtrack, which you can hear in the installation, everything but the actors. And so, of course, what this does, in a way, it kind of deconstructs how this illusion of a film is actually being attained by, methods of visual storytelling, by filmmaking methods, exactly, and how these methods work to suspend the disbelief and sustain the illusion. But what's more interesting to me is actually the aspect of developing a kind of experimental approach in artistic research in order to excavate the layers of fiction and reality as they become projected on top of each other in places like this. So right here, I'm using the word fictionalized places. What does that mean? So to me, I use it in the way that a fictionalized place is a place that has gained prominence by being featured in a product of fiction, and has thus been absorbed into kind of our collective cultural memory. And more often than not, that goes hand in hand with a kind of transformation of the place in terms of its identity. But also this fiction has an effect on reality. This is what's interesting to me, how fiction can actually change reality and not just the other way around. And these effects, they might be social, they might be cultural, they might be ecological or economic in nature, of course. So I want to talk more about this this place, the Rambla Indalecio, on the top over here. And it was very prominently featured in one of Sergio Leone's films, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where two of the protagonists stood underneath this rock outcropping over here and divided up their bounty. And it's a very recognizable rock formation. So this entire landscape, the desert, was used as a set for more than 500 films during the 60s and the 70s. Most of them were the so-called spaghetti western in American vernacular. In German, you say Italo western, which means they are movies set in kind of the Old West, but were being produced by Italian and Spanish movie production companies, Italian directors, actors, and crew. And this is, so the landscape was a stand-in for the landscapes of Texas, of Arizona, of New Mexico, Nevada, and Mexico itself, of course. And so this rock formation gained prominence because it was so recognizable, because there used to be a part of rock that protruded even further, that had a little piece of rock hanging over here, which made it very recognizable. However, when I went there, I find out that the rock formation has collapsed from erosion. So the big boulders that you see down here actually used to be attached up here, but this is no longer the case. This is a view from the side. Here you can see the path where a lot of visitors would flock to this location just to take pictures there. There were some empty bottles of beers thrown about because people just came to also enjoy the sunset. In the back, you can also see the autopista, the highway that has been constructed after the movie was filmed, of course. And you can also hear this in the installation. When there is no dialogue, you can kind of hear the cars whistle by. So ever since the collapse, not many people come here. Like, I did not encounter a single person when I was there. And yeah, so this Tabernas region is, and this rock is, I think, a very interesting case study of how fiction can change an entire landscape and change the kind of social and economic dynamics that go hand in hand with it. Because, of course, not all the films were filmed in these natural landscapes, but it also led to the construction of Western towns, which were villages that were, you know, designed to look architecturally and in terms of urban planning exactly like cities in the kind of Old West. And those villages still stand for the most part. So this is Texas Hollywood for Bravo. You can see they constructed the Hollywood letters, which is, of course, a little bit funny because it's neither Hollywood, nor is it Texas, nor is it in the United States at all, but it's in the Spanish desert. You can see there are some tipis constructed just behind. And of course, not many Western movies are being produced anymore. The kind of generation that grew up with these movies is aging, and the genre is not very attractive to younger generations anymore. So because these Western villages were in the movie industry was a big employer for the region, there was a lot of interest to kind of keep this fiction alive and keep it going. And every one of these villages has developed different strategies to adapt and to remain economically viable. So Texas Hollywood, for example, has constructed a little camping village where you can rent bungalows, as you can see on this kind of dilapidated sign with a pool. The camping is not here in the tipis. It's constructed somewhere over to the side. And of course, there is this Western town, which has separate parts. So over here, you see the American kind of town square with the church. And behind it is the Mexican town square. What's interesting about this is that this church has two entrances, the American one and the Mexican one, which has a completely different facade and a Mexican flag on the other side. And they both share the same interior, however. And this is one of the performers who's writing about, because For Bravo does shows where performers do stunts and kind of theatrical displays and reenactments of kind of Western scenes. And when they don't do that, they just write about in order that tourists can take photographs of what is going on. And yeah, here we can see a tourist taking a picture of the sheriff as he's riding into town. On the right, the sheriff has placed his gun and his hat on the steps of the saloon as he's practicing with his stunt partner inside, and the tourist is kind of looking on. And yeah, this is like after the stunt show, everybody gets to take a picture. And yeah, these are just some impressions from this town. Then there is another town which, you know, has a different kind of approach. In Oasis Mini Hollywood, there is still some filming taking place at the time that I was visiting as well. So I couldn't take many photos because it's all very, they were very restricted with that. But you can see the actors and extras standing here in period costumes. And off to the side, what you can see over here, they have constructed a huge zoo with exotic animals. Of course, in order to draw in tourists who are not attracted enough by this kind of Western nostalgia, but, you know, who want to see something more. So it's not just a Western spectacle with the stunt shows, but also the zoo. And yeah, you can see just some floodlights left behind from the filming and tourists just wandering about. Western Leone is an example of one of the towns that wasn't so good at, you know, keeping this fiction alive and adapting to what to this kind of changing landscape and the changing demands of the tourists. So here you can just see the backside of a facade of some buildings, because of course not all of them are complete with 4 walls and a roof. Some of them are just that, and some of them, the ones that are actually functional, are now being occupied by the employees who work there, because there are also horses that you can rent to go on a little balade in the desert, and so they take care of them. And to me, it was you know, a very interesting overlapping of these layers, you know, because they constructed this completely fictional town in this real place, but then, you know, the fiction kind of went away, and now reality is moving back into these fictional buildings. You can see how somebody is drying their clothes out there where the horses used to be tied up. Now there is a motorized scooter. So yeah, here is one of the employees just riding the horses back into the stable. And I was like the only person there, and the place is now up for sale. Its future is very uncertain. But it's still doing better than, for example, Fort El Condor, which was also a movie set, but which has fallen into complete disrepair. It is now privately owned, and you have to jump over a metal gate in order to, you know, hike there. The only people I met there were young people who go there for the sunsets to drink a beer and take some pictures. So the gallows that are still standing, somebody has replaced the rope that used to be there with just an electrical cable, I suppose also just for a photo opportunity. And yeah, so these are the kind of fates that have happened to these different towns. So it illustrates how they really had to adapt or kind of die and be forgotten. Yeah. So Tabernas as a city or as a village, you know, there's not a lot of people living there. Economically really depends on keeping this kind of fiction alive. You can see on the walls in the street, you know, there is the silhouette of Clint Eastwood with a stylized kind of film strip. The tourist information office is in this Western style. And on the main street, there are these metal director chairs that have been put there as a kind of monument. And they have engraved the names of famous actors and directors who worked on the movies, you know, there, but many decades ago. So yeah, a little bit further out, you also have the Route 66 Tabernas, which is riffing on a different kind of Americana theme, which is not really fitting with this Old West kind of thing, but at this point is also very nostalgic. As I understand, Route 66 does not exist anymore as it does in our kind of cultural imagination. But it is another method to, you know, not let this dream kind of go away. And so, yeah, as you can see, like the effects that a product of fiction can have on a place and on a kind of tight-knit society, culturally, economically, and also in terms of like how it changes the landscape, are manifold. And I believe something similar also happened in Croatia, in Dubrovnik, with the filming of Game of Thrones. I have never visited, but what I read in the media, it, like many other filming locations of this series in Iceland and Ireland and Spain, has not only profited from this, but has suffered from over-tourism. Residents have been moving out of the old city and renting their apartments to tourists, essentially. And yeah, so this opens up more questions than answers, really. And this is kind of the objective of this project, is to provoke some questions about what are these effects of fiction on reality? Are they sustainable? Is there a way in which you can balance these kind of layers of traditional and fictional significance that these places embody? And how can they coexist peacefully, perhaps? So in the case of the rock, it's very easy, because it used to be a natural rock, then it was a famous rock, and now it's just unnatural rock again. So yeah, that's the story of the rock.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think it's interesting to ask you, and then I will let Ada ask you, because I'm curious. You were insisting in this double looking to each other screens, and each screen you have to hear separately. We have this earphones for one screen and then for the other screen. So what is your idea in our perception and our mind when we watch one screen and hear and the other? Do we need to watch from the beginning to the end one and the other, or we just watch it as installation and try to put this contrast between two screens in installation?
Well, yes. I mean, film is still a very linear medium. So, of course, you start in the beginning, you watch it until the end. But of course, our kind of habits of media consumption are also changing. You know, you jump into a thing, you watch many things at the same time. And so each video is supposed to well, you know, of course, it's supposed to immerse you in this place as you are there, you know, because the sound has so much importance as well. You cannot really take it so much out of the equation. But at the same time, you know, it's very easy to just jump to kind of the next thing, as we usually consume media. So, you know, you go from the desert to the next place to another place. And yeah, so it's mimicking this a little bit, and of course it's an experimental setup, and as you can see, you know, it's only part of this much larger project that is also comprised of all the pictures that I'm taking and essentially the story that I'm trying to tell. So I think there can be many different manifestations, but this is the one that I chose for this exhibition.
I really want to thank Jonas to be part of the exhibition. That's really great. And yeah, I was also not wondering, but I know a little bit your work before, and I was wondering, how do you came up like with this idea and this project? This is my first question. And also the second one, if you are planning this like an ongoing project, or
This is a very good question. It seems like this work is a departure from the way that I've been working before. But I don't really see it this way, because before I was working very conceptually. I was working a lot with the body and its image, its presentation, its different manifestations in terms of identity. And what always interested me in this was the kind of theme of where digital and virtual identities kind of overlap with your physical, or like real life identities, which are also not singular. Everybody has many identities, but I was always interested in how we can reconcile these kind of different facets of being, with different degrees of truth or fiction, or I don't know, so many things, or something in between. And so what I'm doing here, or what I'm interested in here, is essentially the kind of same dynamic. Where does the one thing end? Or the question I was asking before is also, how do our online identities shape our real life, and the other way around? And it's the same kind of dynamic that is driving this project, in investigating how does something that is fabricated, something that did not exist before, something that is a product of imagination, of fantasy, how can it have real effects on real people and real places? And instead of kind of the cyberbody, which was the site of my previous inquiry, now I am looking at landscapes and places and sites to kind of excavate the meanings, because they remain embedded in many forms, also physically there. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second question you asked.
No problem. Yeah, but I understand what you mean. Also, when you were talking about, like, in your presentation, it reminds me the idea of your previous work, predictive biography, which we exhibited also, like, in the exhibition of Pars Pro Toto. So I see what you mean with that. And my second question was, I was asking if you are planning this like an ongoing project, or if it's like done with these two films.
No, it's an ongoing project, and experimenting a lot with different methods of kind of making visible what is there or what is no longer there. And going to the desert was a time that was very rich in experiences, and you can see so many layers and the really complex construct of how all these things kind of interrelate, and the many kind of big and small effects that they can have. So every site is kind of infinitely saturated with so many personal stories and levels of meaning that are embedded there, that it's impossible to even mediate it in its entirety. But it's kind of like a challenge for this project to make some of it visible, to mediate it in a way.